Welcome to the JustPeace Talanoa and BURE at COVID-19. Living in Suva and being brought up in rural communities with reflections grounded in traditional values from the examples of Vanuatu and Tailevu, and the culture of generosity that ties us to our circle of identities, and now the leaping into the realities of COVID-19 and the height of the pandemic crisis and its impacts on humanitarian safety and security. The culture of generosity and the need to continue to dialogue with sense-making Talanoa, promoting health and well-being, as well as humanitarian priorities, as alluded to us by Mereani Vula, representing young women hailing from the rural and remote village of Tawake, and Uraia Vuetibau, the Turani Daku Village, Tailevu, in this Talanoa. Join us at the Talanoa with our host and moderator, Justine Maravu, Project Officer, Transcend Oceania.
Welcome to the JustPeace Talanoa and BURE at COVID-19, a platform that brings together community representatives, leaders, women and youth to share stories and priorities that holds value to them, their people, and Vanua. Through their experiences, there is also lessons learned, recommendations, possible solutions, and plans to the current situation. Joining me today are Mereani, a young woman from Tawake in the Cakaudrove, and Mr. Uraia, who is a village headman from Daku Village in Tailevu. Tell us, Uraia and Mereani, what do you most value about your culture? What are some of the traditional practices that the older generation value most from your community? We'll start with you, Uraia.
Firstly, I want to say my name. My name is Uraia Vuetibau, and I'm the Cakaudrove from Daku Tailevu, that's king of Moretu in the province of Tailevu. Firstly, I want to thank this program for allowing me this segment for the interviewing about what happening today and before in our village of Daku. What do I value the most about our culture is our religion, to be a true religion, and to be a respectful person and to be a law-abiding person. Some of the traditional practices that our older generation valued the most from our community are religious, time of management, teamwork, and respecting each other.
Thank you, Uraia. Mereani?
Yeah, thank you, Justine. I would like to just add on to what he said. But personally, for me, within the context of traditional values, I would like to acknowledge and really share about the culture of generosity that exists within the Tawake communities. And I think, not that I think, I believe that that's one of the values that is practiced in a lot of communities. And I mean, I grew up watching my grandparents, and do that. And it's expressed in the most very simple way, just having to go out to sea, fish, come back, and then you share to the extended families or the other tribes from within our village. And also when it comes to, because those are the two main source of living, of the land, they till the land, and they share the root crops. And yeah, and I would say that that's one of the traditional value I would like to acknowledge is the culture of generosity. And I see that becomes it's kind of like the string that ties the circle of courage in communities. And then I grew up within that context. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Mereani. Now, what are some of the emerging issues of concern that you see in the changes that are happening now, and who are the most affected? We'll start with you, Mereani.
Okay. My thoughts are on the community in general, but maybe to be specific, I'm thinking more of my concern is on those who are here in Suva, and they are from the outer islands, and I feel that they are the most impacted. While I can see that the whole of Fiji is impacted, families are impacted, their source of living is impacted, their source of income, that's to generally speaking. We have families that have no source of income because they've now left without a job, and at the same time students have to stay home and deal with the adjustments that they have to do in order to make do with the circumstances that we are all in, because we can't leave the house. We just have to stay at home, because in that is our safety. While I think of those families that are impacted, my thoughts are also on those who are from the outer islands and are stuck here in Suva. Because earlier on I said that there's a circle of courage that exists within the village, tied around the culture of generosity and respect and many other culture that exist. But I feel that they are outside of that circle of courage, and so they are very much vulnerable at this time. And my concern is on those that are here, but they are away from home. So yeah, think about those things. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mereani, for sharing some of the impacts of COVID-19 in our community, especially those of our relatives that are here in the mainland, and trying to get back to Tailevu. Uraia?
I agree to the Mereani. From my point of view, the main emerging issue on the concern of is our culture, firstly is our drainage of our culture. The change of happening today is traditional life. Example, the dress code, lack of respect, peer pressure, and the most affected group are the youth and our youngsters generation. Secondly, the use of technology, which is affecting our older and younger generation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Uraia, for those real concerns that is affecting the lives of our young people, and also the country, Fiji in general. There's a lot of things happening that is our concern, and we'll talk more about this as we go on with our Talanoa. Thank you, Uraia and Mereani. Thank you for watching JustPeace Talanoa BURE at COVID-19. Welcome again to the JustPeace Talanoa BURE at COVID-19. Mereani and Uraia, looking back 5 to 10 years ago, what has changed and why? Mereani?
Yeah, that's a really good question that I feel that we need to really look at and ponder on, because I feel that and I also see the changes that are taking place in every aspect of life in communities, and I would like to speak from the context of the crisis that is at hand for us. The change in the climate, and also the COVID-19 that's really affecting our communities. I was thinking about the issue of just having to find strength in the midst of all of this, but more so I think that this is one of the biggest changes that has affected the lives of communities, and from the oldest right down to the youngest, with the state of the economy, the economy right now, and also how the people are looking for answers, they're looking for ways just to cope, given that they're out of job, as I mentioned earlier. And those are some of the realities that I constantly think about, and also I see that the crisis that we have is really impacted. So to answer your question, if I look back, just now looking back 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I really see the changes of how, the culture of generosity has been affected. and the circle of courage within communities and families have been greatly affected, because now we are no longer getting the quality and the quantity of the resources that we used to have. So if I am to speak within the context of the villages where I am from, because the two main sources of living is the sea, the ocean, and the vanua. And I really see that not only the pandemic has affected that, and also the change in climate, I see that it's greatly impacted just how they express that culture of generosity, because now what you openly give, you cannot do that because you're concerned, because we're not getting enough that we used to get before. And that really has affected that circle of courage and how the community looked after one another. So what seems to be like an open hand giving, sharing is kind of getting smaller. There is still a culture of generosity that is expressed, but it's not so much how it was done before. Yeah, so I constantly think about those things. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mereani. Uraia.
I think from my view, from 5 to 10 years ago, one of the major change that been happening in my community, especially in my village of Daku, is the rising of the sea level. Yeah, it affects where to plant our foods. Yeah? The rising of the sea level is a major concern in our village of Daku, and it's also causing flooding in the village. And we have set, for example, for the whole of Vuetibau, we are the example of the first village to adapt to this kind of weather. Some always tell us to relocate, but we are promising that we will adapt and fight against the climate change that is, especially the rising of the sea level in our village. And it's a big improvement in our village nowadays, especially to thank the government and the American aid for donating us with the floodgates that have been built in the village. From now on, in the village we have 5 floodgates, 4 from the government and 1 from the USA. That's the main protection that we are protecting our village today in the village of Daku. Thank you.
Thank you, Uraia. Now, from what you have shared, what are the processes that are working within your community, and what are the challenges as well?
Our process, we are fair challenging facing the village right now. Last 2 weeks, we have taken some money from the development fund, so we can buy soil from the Sawani and buried some place in our village, because we are finishing the stage 1 of a project of lifting Daku up. We are having trying to get the second stage right now, and we really need the government aids on the NGOs to help us support what we are doing in the village right now.
Thank you, Uraia, for sharing the story of Daku, who is a very classic example for us now in terms of adaptation. Mereani?
Yeah, I think along the same line of what my colleague has talked about, but for my village, I to be honest, I haven't been there for quite some times, but I do have frequent contact, consistent contact with my family, my uncles who are fishermen and farmers, and I hear stories of how they are. I would say that they're coping but I see how this pandemic and the issue of climate change has also affected them greatly, but at the same time is bringing the people together in my village just to find ways to work together. And one of the example I can share is is how the men in my tribe are working together under a scheme. It's like a farmer scheme where you get the men together and then do collective work in the village and also outside of the village, where they have ownership to pieces of land outside of Vanua, but they use that place to go and plant. And so in that way they are accumulating more resources because they're working together. And even in receiving the resources, because they have to sell their root crops, and at the same time, other than just sharing amongst them, that's what they do. And so so there is a collective share of resources. Although the culture of generosity is greatly affected, but I see that they're coping and they are finding ways to work together as a village, as a family, as community. And so while we see that the sea is not getting any better, and also the land is not getting any fruitful, but so those are some of the things I can share at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mereani. Thank you, Uraia. Thank you for watching JustPeace Talanoa BURE at COVID-19. Stay with us. We will be back after this break. Welcome again to our JustPeace Talanoa BURE at COVID-19. Mereani and Uraia, what are some of your recommendations that you would like for positive change, that you and your community would like to see happen?
Maybe Uraia, would you like to go first? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the last segment. Some of the recommendation I would like for the positive change, especially from my village of Daku. You have to change the sea walls. It's been being built since we are young by the USP, okay? And we try to help us reduce the water pollution in our village, and to help us for the level 2 of the upgrading of the village by 1 meter up. Okay? That's the recommendation from my village of Daku, and we really need a machine or a dredge to dredge our river for the village of Daku and our 2 settlements, Antioch and Kali, which is belong to Daku. They are the 2 settlements. They are affected by the rising of the sea level too. Thank you.
Thank you, Uraia. Mereani?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, I would say the same for my village, my community, because the seawall that was once standing on a shoreline has been all washed away. So that's one of the things I would put my finger on, just for aid and for help in just helping the community to build those seawalls up. Although there's extensively a lot of damage that's on the shorelines, but that would be one thing. But the other thing I would like to maybe plead with our government is just having to have platforms where I feel that at this point in time the voices of our communities are very, very important. And we're in this time of uncertainty, and there is a lot of uncertainty that is across our Fiji, and I feel that having a platform where communities and families can just be given the platform to voice and dialogue more on the real issues that's happening behind closed doors that we do not see. And I feel that at this time it's important that we talk about those things, because I mean, we are all aware that, you know, our culture, we don't like to talk about things. We're not very open about the issues that we face, what we go through on a day-to-day basis, due to a lot of, you know, cultural barriers and reasons that we have. But yeah, so I would feel that platforms would be given where communities can come and can talk and voice their concerns or their issues or the, you know, just questions that they have. Yeah, so I believe that would be 2 recommendations I would say for now. Yeah, so thanks.
Thank you, Mereani. What better time to do that for our communities, providing platforms. Now, is there any other things that you would like to share to our viewers today, Uraia and Mereani? We'll start with Uraia.
Firstly, on behalf of the village Headman of Daku, I would like to ask for assistance from my village, from the NGOs and the government, to help in our community project to continue to feel the effects of the climate change in our village. Especially from the youth of Daku, the government. I want to thank the government for the past donation, and NGOs they have donated to our village, especially to our 2 settlements who are struggling the most about the change of the climate change and the rising of seawater. It's affect mostly our village, and I really hope that the government and the NGOs will help us soon in our project in our village of Daku. Thank you.
Naka Uraia, Mereani.
I mean, I was thinking about 2 things. First is I'm thinking more about the issue about climate change, and I'm just sensing the need for more awareness to be done and more dialogue to take place for our communities to just to be aware of the changes that are taking place, the crises that are happening around us. I feel that the more, if we have better understanding about the crisis, then we are at a place where we are better prepared for the changes that are happening. Yeah, and I just feel that you know, I would advise, you know, young people and even members of household to take time to read, you know, climate change, understand what the impacts that it can do in our lives, and in our community, and of course it affects our life. And I would encourage young people to, you know, just to learn more about climate change, and in that way they will be at a better position to be climate smart, you know, because we cannot avoid the changes that are taking place, but we can learn to understand the issue and see better way we can live prepared. So that's one thing that comes to mind. And yeah, and the second thing would be just I believe, you know, the crisis, we cannot fix it, although we are working together. I mean, in terms of the climate that's changing, and also with the pandemic that's so affect us today. Yeah, I would say that it's the best time to work together as a community and as families. You know, family is a very, very important place where you can find your circle of courage, where you hold on to with the people that you have in your life, families, and yeah, and those are the 2 things that comes to mind, and I would like to share with our communities and whoever it is that's watching, you know, because in this time to be alone would be you trapping your own deathbed, you know, you can't. So I think it'd be a good time to be together with people and learn to strengthen one another during this uncertain time. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mereani. Thank you, Uraia. We have come to the end of our last segment. Thank you for watching JustPeace Talanoa Mbure at COVID-19.
As we conclude our JustPeace Talanoa Mbure at COVID-19, we are reminded once again to enable people living just peace and nonviolence in Oceania, we need to be both mindful and maintain safety protocol, mask up, stay home. Isolation may be tough while caring for each other, and at the same time, our need for peace and stability within the safety of our homes, communities, and the nation at large is of vital importance. Building just peace community in changing environment and climate. Let's also continue the importance of Talanoa. I'm Adi Vasulevu. Join us at the same time next week.